All right. Hello and welcome everyone to our office hours webinar for BrainHQ today. We're so glad that you could be joining us. My name is Stephanie and I am a multimedia specialist within the customer support team here at Posit Science. My co-host today is Dr. Henry Monka. Henry, you want to say hi?
Hey, everyone. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good to see you. Uh, Now, most of you have probably seen Henry in one of our many previous webinars, but in case this is your first time joining us, Henry earned his PhD in neuroscience at the University of California, San Francisco, where he studied brain plasticity with our co-founder, Dr. Michael Merzenich. He has been running the show here as our CEO at Posit Science since 2011. So, Henry, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here and doing this today.
Oh, brain speed is one of my favorite topics. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right, so let's go over a brief agenda for today. So Henry is going to go ahead and give a brief presentation, excuse me, about brain speed. And then following that, we will run a poll to see which of the brain speed exercises you all would most like us to demonstrate for you. Now, there are a lot more of you in the audience than there are of us, so that means that we likely won't be able to answer every single question that comes up in the Q&A, but we are going to do our best. But if there are any questions that don't get answered, you can always send follow-up questions to our support team. The best email address to reach them at is support@brainhq.com. We also have a support site with answers to common questions that you can find at support.brainhq.com. The last thing that I wanted to note before we jump into it is that today's webinar is being recorded and it will get posted to our YouTube channel probably sometime next week. If you want to be notified when that video goes live, you can head on over to youtube.com/brainhq and subscribe there. And then whenever we post a video going forward, you should get an email notification that the video is up. All right, so I think I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Henry. Henry, if you want to go ahead and take over the screen share.
All right, let me do that. Fantastic. So like Stephanie said, I'm going to say really just a few words about brain speed because we mostly want to focus on your questions and demoing and explaining the brain speed exercises in BrainHQ. But give me just a moment and let me kind of set the stage for what we're talking about. So, hey, what do we mean when we say brain speed? Well, scientists have been studying the idea of how fast the brain works for quite some time. And often in the field of psychology and cognitive science, when we think about these things, we turn back to William James. He wrote a profoundly important set of books called The Principles of Psychology back in 1890, where with the best tools he had available, and frankly, by thinking really hard, he started to ask a lot of really important questions about how the brain worked. And one of the questions he asked was, hey, what is the minimum amount of duration that we can distinctly feel? What's the shortest period of time that can pass that we can notice? And he worked with some colleagues and did some experiments, did some measurements, and they came to the conclusion that the shortest amount of time they were able to notice was about 1/20th of a second. A scientist might call that 50 milliseconds. What they found is that anything that happened that was shorter than that, the human eye really in the visual system, the human eye really couldn't see that. And that was really started to be the foundation of the idea of processing speed. This observation that, hey, some things might happen in the world faster than your brain could keep up with. And as a result of them happening faster than your brain could keep up with, you might not notice them at all. And that's the foundation for what we're going to talk about today. Now, of course, the field's come a long way. We have a much more elaborate definition now. This picture now is my colleague, Carleen Ball. She's been a collaborator of ours at BrainHQ for almost 20 years now at the University of Alabama. She's really one of the world authorities on the modern science of brain speed. And if you ask her, she'll give a slightly more complex definition. She'll say, processing speed refers to the efficiency and the speed at which individuals process information, both how quickly they receive the information and how quickly they respond to it. And I think that's important because it starts to highlight the idea that processing speed is not just a clock inside your brain. It really has to do with how rapidly you can receive information, how rapidly you can work on it, and then how rapidly you can act on information. And it turns out that, hey, reality can move very fast, right? Even faster than our brain. Here's kind of a fun example. We're going to watch this video of this toad that you'll see here in the center of the screen, and they're going to do what toads do best, which is catch a fly. Let's take a look. Getting ready? Okay, that was very fast. And if you're like me, all you really saw was that the toad opened his mouth and then he was done very quickly. Let's slow that down a little bit. See if we can see it a little bit better. Okay, now in slow motion, let's watch really quickly. Let's see if it's slow enough now that our brain's processing speed can see what happens. Oh, that's still pretty fast. So luckily, the authors of this video slowed it down one more time, and we might be able to see it this time. This is as slow as the video is going to go. Let's see if we can watch the frog catch this fly. He's about to go. Watch his mouth open. Go for it, frog. There we go. Okay, so that time maybe, just maybe, you can see most of what happened here with the frog opening his mouth and getting this fly. And again, this gets back to this notion that William James had, which is, hey, some things in life can happen faster than our brain can keep up with it. You might think of our brain as almost having a second hand that goes tick, tick, tick. And if anything happens within one tick of that clock, we really just can't quite see it. And that might affect how we do everyday things. So let's talk about that question. How important is brain speed in everyday life? Well, it turns out that brain speed affects just about everything that you do in a day. And I've pulled up a few examples here, but there are 1 million more. So for example, let's say you're hearing someone talk quickly. And I've been told many times that I talk quickly. I've been told many times on webinars like this that I talk quickly. So I try to slow down a little bit. But if your brain is operating more quickly, you can keep up with someone who's talking quickly. But if your brain's operating more slowly, you might not be able to keep up with that rapid speech. Turns out the same thing's true for hearing in a noisy environment. If you are at a restaurant with a friend or a family member and there's a lot of background noise at the restaurant, well, if your brain is operating very quickly, you can pick out those little bits of speech, even though there's some noise in the background, and keep up with the conversation. But if your brain's operating more slowly, well, that becomes harder to hear what people are saying in noisy restaurants. How about something like making a joke with your friends? Well, that's actually a lot of that is about brain speed as well as your sense of humor. If you're going to say something funny at the right time in a conversation, well, your brain has to be operating quickly enough that you notice what's going on in the conversation, you keep up with it, and you find that exact right time to make your little joke, to make your little quip. They say in humor, timing is everything. And of course, what that means is brain speed is really important. Just think about finishing everyday tasks. I think all of us have maybe been in a line at the ATM to get some cash or in a supermarket checkout line. And, we feel like, there's a lot of people behind me and I'm just not quite going quickly enough. I'm slowing them down. Well, of course, that's about brain speed as well. How about driving, right? Well, things happen really quickly while you're driving. Often people might say, well, I didn't see that thing that happened, that pedestrian or that car. It just came out of the corner of my eye. Well, what coming out of the corner of your eye means is it was there all along, but your brain wasn't fast enough to quite notice it as it started to move. Even balance. One of the biggest reasons people trip and fall is because their brains slowed down. If your brain's operating quickly, you start to notice that you're tripping and falling, and you can make a step to correct yourself before you fall. Brain speed is incredibly important for that. Maybe recognizing a familiar face. We've all had that experience of seeing someone, we can't quite place them, but if our brain's operating a little quicker, our brain can process that facial information and come up with who that is. Or even just being sharp, if you ask people to use ordinary language, say, hey, how would you describe someone who's really smart? Often one of the things people will say is, well, he's really quick, she's really quick. And what that means is, well, that person's brain is operating really quickly. And so they seem smart to us. So that tells us how important brain speed is for just about every aspect of everyday life. So you might ask, well, if we're going to try to improve brain speed, where in the brain is speed? Is there a certain clock in the center of the brain? And if we get that clock to tick faster, can we make our brain faster? And it turns out the brain doesn't work like that at all. There's no central clock in the brain that's ticking off time like that. In fact, the brain is unfortunately incredibly complex. There's an enormous number of different areas in the brain. This is actually a map that people have made of the visual system in the brain. Each one of these little colored boxes represents a tiny little different piece of the brain that's involved in visual information processing. And each one of these lines represents a connection from one of these areas to another area. So you see there's dozens of areas shown here. There's actually hundreds of areas across the brain. And every one of those areas is just a hop, skip, and a jump from another area. And what that means is that tells us why brain speed is so important. If information is going to get from one little part of the brain to another little part of the brain, and it's going to take 2 stops to do it, well, the faster your brain works, the faster that information is going to flow through the brain, the better decisions you're going to make. And so every operation of the brain, every type of cognitive function, whether it's your attention or your working memory or your decision making or your social cognition, how you interact with faces and other people, every one of those cognitive functions is enabled and empowered by brain speed. So we think of brain speed as essentially being everywhere in the brain, and it's really kind of the rock foundation of how the rest of the brain works. And in fact, many cognitive psychologists have argued that brain speed is the fundamental thing that changes as we get old. As we get older, our brain slows down, and that slowing of our brain drives every other single change that's happening with our brain health and cognitive performance as we get older. So brain speed is foundational. Brain speed is important. What goes wrong with brain speed? Well, let's look at a couple examples of what you might think of as disorders of brain speed. What are things that come to a doctor's attention about brain speed? Well, one of the most common ones is what's called central auditory processing disorder. And often this comes up with kids, although it can come up with adults as well. And what this means is that the auditory parts of your brain, the parts that deal with hearing and listening and processing speech, means that those have slowed down. And as a result, kids or adults can show up with pretty, distinct sets of symptoms, right? You might have difficulty hearing a noise. You might have poor sound localization, can't quite tell where a sound is coming from. You might have reduced auditory or working memory, harder to remember a list or something that someone tells you, right? And in general, a person might just need extra time to listen and understand and respond to auditory information. Well, you can imagine if you're a kid who has that kind of problem, well, school might be hard for you. You might imagine if you're an adult with that kind of problem, maybe holding down a job is going to be harder for you or interacting with your friends. And so you might see a person who has those issues, but when a psychologist or a sensory neurophysiologist or a neurologist examines it, what they realize is, hey, this kid doesn't have exactly a learning disability. They're having a central auditory processing disorder. And if we can help tune the brain up to process information better, maybe we can help that kid succeed in school better. So that's a very specific example. But one thing that was really striking to me as a brain scientist when we started BrainHQ is it turns out that virtually every neurological and psychiatric condition has slowed processing speed at its center. You might have heard of things like mild cognitive impairment, which is a memory impairment in older adults, or multiple sclerosis, or Parkinson's disease, or even Alzheimer's. Well, all of those have very distinctive things that happen to them that define the condition. But people who have those conditions, virtually every single one has slowed processing speed as well. If you look at psychiatric disorders like schizophrenia or bipolar, where we really think of the disorder as being a thought disorder or a mood disorder like depression, those all seem quite different, and they all are. But nonetheless, if you measure the brain processing speed in these kinds of patients, what you see is that virtually all of them have slowed information processing. And if you look at the various kinds of things that we might broadly describe as having damaged the brain, let's say you've had a traumatic brain injury or a concussion or a stroke where a brain bleed has directly damaged your brain, or even something like heart failure or chemo brain or HIV infection, all of which have brain health symptoms. All of those conditions, again, show slowed processing speed as one of the central issues that happen to them. And again, what that tells us is, back to the beginning, processing speed is simply foundational for every aspect of brain health and brain performance. And that's why it shows up as a common factor across all of these neurological and psychiatric conditions. So processing speed is incredibly important, and that's why we focus so heavily on it in BrainHQ training. And with that intro, I'm going to kick it back to you, Stephanie, and let's get practical now. Let's talk about the exercises in BrainHQ that specifically target brain speed. How do they work? What are they doing? How can a person use them? And how can all of us sharpen and improve our brain speed?
Thank you very much. So I'm going to go ahead and take back over the presentation here so that way we can get a poll going because we maybe aren't going to have time to answer every single or go through every single exercise today, but we want to prioritize the exercises that you guys most want to see. So let me go ahead and launch that poll there. Um, so you should see a poll pop up on your screen. With 5 different questions. Each of those questions is basically an exercise, and we'd like you to rank from a scale of 1 to 5 how important it is for us to review that exercise. So a 1 would be less important, and a 5 would be the most important. Like that's the exercise that you came here to watch us demo for you. So we'll let that roll for just a minute here. Now, I will say one of the things that we talked about in our previous attention webinar is that attention and brain speed are both very sort of foundational to how cognition works in our brains. So I know that this is going to be a very sought after and it is a very requested webinar. So I'm glad that you all were able to join us today. Now, just a real quick review in case you need any help remembering which of those exercises are which. Hawkeye is the exercise where there are birds that appear on screen for a short period of time. They disappear, and you have to select the portion of the screen that the odd bird out had appeared in. Eye for detail is an exercise where there are going to be several images that flash on screen sequentially very, very quickly. And some of those images are going to be the same and some of those are going to be different. And you have to pick out the same ones. Sound sweeps is an auditory exercise. That's going to be the one where you hear the sweeps. So you'll hear it go whoop, whoop. And you have to determine whether the sweep went up or it went down. Visual sweeps is the visual version of sound sweeps, essentially. There are bars that appear on screen and they either expand or they compress. And so your task is to figure out which direction those bars had gone. And then fine tuning, our last exercise in the brain speed category, has to do with confusable pairs. So you'll hear either like da or ga, for example, and you have to identify which of those syllables you had heard correctly. All right, so it has been about 2 minutes since we launched the poll. Looks like results are still coming in here. All right, I'm going to give you all another 10 seconds real quick to get your poll responses in.
There are a lot of votes coming in, Stephanie.
Lots of votes coming in. Now, Henry, if I remember correctly, your favorite exercise is eye for detail. So I expect that you would want to talk about that exercise.
I will if the people demand it, Stephanie, but let's be driven by what we see people want to hear about here.
Science forward.
True, I do love Eye for Detail, mostly because it's a fantastic brain training exercise, but I have also really always loved the job that the art team did with Eye for Detail. I think the visual stimuli, the visual environment are just gorgeous in that exercise. That was the first exercise where I trained on every level back when we first built it. So I liked it so much.
Oof, and that's more than a decade ago now at this point.
There are a lot of levels of that one also.
Yes, also that. All right, so let's go ahead and end the poll there. We got most folks most folks have answered. So it looks like our number one most requested is going to be Hawkeye, with 48% of people saying this is the most important exercise for you all to cover, which is great for me because I love Hawkeye. And I'll share those results with you all so you all can see it as well. Let me go ahead and pivot over to my demo window, and then I can get Hawkeye up for you guys. All right. So Henry, just to verify, you're able to see the BrainHQ screen, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. I see that.
fantastic.
Use personal
Uh,
trainer and the dashboard right there.
there we go. All right. So one of the questions that we had early on was how can you navigate to these specific exercises? Well, there are two ways that you can do that. The first way is to click on the Explore All Exercises button here on the dashboard. And then all of our exercises are broken up into category here. So for this one, let's head on over to Hawkeye under the brain speed category. And I'll go ahead and queue up stage one, level one. Now, Henry, do we want to go through the pre-written tutorial or do we want to just go ahead and give a tutorial as we're going through it ourselves?
Why don't we go through the pre-written one and I'll say a few words. Just turn off the voiceover if that comes on, and I'll just say a few words about it as we go. So
Sure thing.
Hawkeye, I'll dive in, Stephanie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so of course, Hawkeye is one of the most important brain speed training exercises. And what we're asking your brain to do is to quickly and accurately be able to notice where, in this case, a bird is different in your peripheral vision. Your vision's sharpest in the center of your view, and it kind of gets less sharp as you move away from the center of your view. So we're going to challenge the speed and also the accuracy of your brain's ability to process information. So as it says, when you do Hawkeye, a group of birds is going to appear and then quickly disappear. So let's go to the next instruction. And so we're going to look for the bird that's different. And you can see it's highlighted in these instructions. The bird we're looking for in this case has a black head and a black tail. Now it's pretty easy to notice which one is different when you have all day to look at it. And that is the core of visual speed training. We are not going to give you all day to look at it. We are going to ask your brain to process this quickly. We're only going to show the birds for a short period of time. So let's give it a go.
All right.
So Stephanie's going to click start. The birds appear and they disappear. So just pause here for a minute. Let's not do anything yet. So first of all, Hawkeye is not trying to train your reaction time. You do not need to click as quickly as possible. And in fact, you're not even allowed to click until the birds go away. Often when I watch people doing Hawkeye, they're trying to click on the bird as soon as they see it. It's not going to let you click on the bird as soon as you see it. You have to wait until the birds go away. And that's why this is visual brain training. What we're training here is not how fast you can click on a mouse. I don't really care that much how fast you can click on a mouse. What we are training here is how quickly can your brain process all of this information from the birds in the sky, and then how quickly can your brain then figure out which one of these birds is different. Now, I've talked a lot. We've probably all forgotten which bird was different, but luckily during the tutorial, it's going to show you the right answer with that glowing kind of greenish circle. And now with the birds gone, we click. Where did we see that bird? Where do we remember it? And you got it right. Good job. So let's do a few more now. Let's go ahead and click start. So again, she's going to click start. The birds are going to appear and then they're going to disappear. Now that they're gone, Stephanie can go ahead and click where did she see the bird. So I agree, down there at about 7 o'clock. Now, let's do a few more up there. And as Stephanie is doing it, the birds are getting faster on the screen. And what I mean by faster very specifically is they are shown on the screen for a shorter period of time. And that means the brain has less time to be able to extract the information. It's getting harder as she gets it right. Now, I should always say in BrainHQ, it's fine to get some wrong. So, Stephanie, what happens if this is too fast? Okay, maybe you just didn't quite catch that one. You should always just guess in BrainHQ. No one feels bad about getting one wrong. We're not judging you. You don't get a grade from your teacher or anything like that. If you get it wrong, it's going to slow down a little bit. And that's important as well. We want to find the right level of challenge for your brain. We are getting most of them right, but a few of them wrong. That's when your brain has to work the hardest, and that's where your brain can rewire itself through the power of brain plasticity. Let's do a few more of these, Stephanie, and I think what we should do after that is show a few other levels in Hawkeye. And if you have
Yes.
questions specifically about the exercise that Stephanie demonstrated now, Hawkeye, please put them in. We putting them in the Q&A or the chat? Stephanie, I forget. Where do we like
The Q&A today.
Q&A? Okay, great. So let me know if you have very specific questions. We'll try to get as many Q&A questions as we can, but if you specifically do them about Hawkeye, then let us know. So, okay, so now we have the idea of this. Let's look at a few other levels because I want to talk about how we really train brain speed systematically.
Let's go
So,
down to,
well,
let's
actually,
see.
okay, if you know a good one, I want to pick one that's not too much harder to start with.
Oh, okay.
So
Let's
I usually do stage two, and I do
stage
the
two.
middle one on the left.
Middle one on the left.
Yep, perfect. That one. Let's do that one.
Cool.
Okay. So we're gonna, yeah, click on the eye there. So let's, perfect. Great. So now the birds are a little bit different. And you see our target bird there, kind of at the 4 o'clock position. It's kind of got striped wings, maybe a brown wings, and it looks a bit different, but it's harder to tell the difference between this bird and the other birds. And now there's actually a background as well, right? And that background, kind of this misty mountain, it actually makes it harder for your brain to make the birds pop out against them. So we're training your brain at a harder level. Most people who do this level are going to be a little bit slower with these birds, but it's important to train against them anyway. So Stephanie, do you want to give this a couple goes? And I'm going to answer a few questions about this that I see it copying from the chat. So
That
someone
sounds good.
asks, Karen asks, hey, where should you focus when you're doing this exercise? The birds are all up in your peripheral vision and you don't know where to look. That's a great question. What we recommend you do is look at the center of the screen, but you want to kind of spread your attention
Yeah.
out so you feel like you're processing information from all around where the birds are. That way you have a pretty good chance of noticing that bird no matter where it appears, at the top of your screen, at the bottom, on the left and the right. So look at the center and try to notice that different bird. And hey, if you don't see it, just get it wrong. It's going to slow right down. Totally fine. Eventually, it'll be slow enough that you're going to notice which bird is different as you look in the center of the screen. So great question, Karen. Uh, yeah, Greg asked, hey, there are plenty of times where I don't think I've seen a bird, and then I guess. And hey, sometimes, and he does quite often, it turns out to be correct. Why is that? Well, that's actually a super interesting a question. There are a lot of scientists that are studying the nature of conscious information processing. And it turns out you don't necessarily have to have a conscious perception of noticing the bird to have your brain nonetheless process enough information that you can be right. You might call this a subconscious response. Some scientists would call this an automatic response. So that's a great observation because what it means is even if you're not sure where you saw it, just guess. Guess where it feels like it was a little bit different or just guess. Again, sometimes you'll be wrong, no problem. It'll get slower. But like this questioner says, you'll be right more often than you think because your brain has extracted some information from what it saw, not quite enough information to form a conscious perception, but enough information for you to guide action. You can think about this a little bit like an instinctive reaction. Imagine you're driving and you see something out of the corner of your eye, just like in Hawkeye, where we're training you to notice things in your peripheral vision. You might find that you've put your foot on the brake and stopped the car before you could even say what it was that you saw out of the corner of your eye. That happened to me recently when I was driving up to Lake Tahoe up in California here. We're based in San Francisco. And I saw something out of the corner of my eye and I stopped the car on a snowy road and the car was fully stopped before I saw that it was in fact a deer jumping across the road. And of course, I'm very glad I did see that and stop. Thank you, Hawkeye. But I didn't need to figure out it was a deer before I stopped. I just needed to have my brain process just enough information to tell me to stop. And so you can use that with BrainHQ as well. So great question. Somebody else asks, I'm not noticing. Oh, well, I should answer this one. I'm not noticing the different bird in the exercise you're showing. So,
Oh,
want to slow it down for a minute and let's take a look here again. If you feel like you've lost track of what bird you're seeing, you can always click on the eye button like Stephanie did, and it will show you the two birds. The target's always on the left, and you can see it's a little bit darker. It has those stripes, and all the distractor birds look the same. They're the one shown on the right there. So if you just sort of lose track at some point, you can always come back to that. Great question. Thanks for asking that. And someone else asks, hey, how do you advance through the levels? And let's go back and show people how to do that because I want to show a few more
Sure.
levels of Hawkeye. So let's quit this one. You can always quit by finishing or using the X. And then, so when you've picked the Hawkeye exercise, each one of these sort of empty boxes with a circle in it, that's a different level in Hawkeye. And you're welcome to explore them one by one. We would generally recommend you start in the upper left and try each level in each stage before going on to the next stage. That's a nice systematic way to work through them. Also, if you choose to use the personal trainer, and we have a different webinar where we talk about the personal trainer will kind of guide you through them step by step. So let's look at one more level, and let's just pick one of the high ones just to show that, hey, this does get pretty challenging.
Sure. We'll see how I do.
I don't know. This one might be pretty straightforward. Oh, these are some tough birds. We're looking at some ducks
Ugh.
here, and you can see they look pretty similar. Our target duck there is on the left, and you can see that, she kind of has or he kind of has a brown, kind of patch on his chest. And the distractor bird is on the right there, and maybe some gray on the wingtips. But I bet this one's going to be pretty hard. Let's just do one or two trials, then we'll go on to the next exercise. Okay,
Yep.
so where is our target bird? Is down there around 5 o'clock, but boy, that is pretty similar looking. I bet when we start this is going to be hard, even for people who've done a lot. And that's okay. When you hit a new level like this, you're probably going to be slower because we've made it harder, and that's okay. Again, what I mainly want to make sure is you're training at a level where you're getting a bunch of them right and some of them wrong. I don't really care how fast or how slow that is. That's the right level for your brain. So let's do this once or twice. I have absolutely no idea, so just guess. Okay,
Hey.
good job, Stephanie. Let's do one or two more. Why don't you get this one wrong and slow it down a little bit? We all know you're very fast, Stephanie. We appreciate that. But for those of us who are a little bit slower, you can slow it down for us. Let's get this one wrong too. Okay, all right. We're all going to stare really carefully. This will be our last one. There it is. I see it up there around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Great. Let's click there. Okay, with my eye on the clock, Stephanie, that might be enough Hawkeye for now. Shall we pick another exercise to talk about? What
I agree. Let's go ahead and let's see, what was the next runner-up for exercises here? I believe, all right, next up, it looks like fine tuning had the second most number of votes here.
That sounds
So
great.
let's
I'm
pivot
going
to
to answer
fine
one more
tuning.
Hawkeye question just because I
Yeah.
love, well, you got a fine tuning set up. Linda asks, I found it very helpful to make sure not to blink. I used to just blink a little bit as normal or even randomly, and you occasionally wouldn't see the birds because I blinked. And so I agree with that. As it gets started, you see it's about ready to go. Just make sure your eyes stay open. It doesn't have to stay open for very long. The birds are on there pretty quick. And that's another way to make sure you actually see the birds every single time. Great observation and a great tip. Thanks, Linda. Okay, are we doing fine tuning now?
Fine tuning.
Okay, this is a very different kind of exercise. So now instead of training the visual speed, we are going to train auditory speed, how fast you hear, and we're going to do it in an incredibly specific way. And what fine tuning is designed to do is help you distinguish or tell the difference between the very short parts of speech. And the short parts of speech I'm talking about are called phonemes. And that's usually just a little sound, typically a consonant and a vowel, like ba, B-A, or po, P-O, or various kinds of other very simple little sounds like that. Now, it turns out that, hey, those are often quite confusable. The difference between a ba and a da is very, very small. And in fact, actually, before you start, Stephanie, we can all demo this ourselves. So if you're on this webinar, please go ahead and do this with me. Grab your thumb and your index finger, and I want you to put them on your voice box right here. And I want you to make the sound ba, like a bottle. Ba, ba.
Bah.
Now, as you do that, you might notice that your lips open at around the same time your voice box starts to vibrate. Ba, ba. Now I want you to make a sound that's just a little bit different. It's called pa, like my papa. So make that sound with your fingers on your voice box. Pa, pa. Now
Bah.
you might notice now that your lips open just a little tiny bit before your voice box starts to vibrate. There's a very short gap in time there, just a tiny fraction of a second. And that's actually the main difference between a ba and a pa. Now, if your brain is operating with a high brain speed, no problem. You can hear that little gap and your brain will automatically process and you'll know, am I hearing a ba sound or a pa sound? But if your brain has been slowed down, maybe you have central auditory processing disorder, maybe you have one of the other brain health issues I mentioned, you may not notice that short little gap, and that ba and pa sound are going to be confusing. Now, your brain's not just going to say, oh, hello, Henry, you have an auditory processing disorder. You can't tell the difference between ba's and pa's. You're just going to experience the world a little murkier, a little muddier. It's going to be harder to make out what people are saying. Things are going to sound a little confusing. And it might be harder to remember things that people say or pay attention to them. So, Tell Us Apart is designed to make your brain faster working on those exact parts of speech. So, what are the parts of speech we're working on this level, Stephanie?
Uh, yeah, pardon me. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. So like Henry said, these are going to be very, very tiny, the very first part of syllables here, the phonemes you said, correct?
Yep.
All
Ka,
right.
Okay, so we're working on two sounds here. One of them sounds kind of like ga, and the other one sounds kind of like ka. Now, it's important for me to say you're going to hear these sounds, and they may not sound like a normal ga or a ka to you. Many people on this webinar are from the US of A, and people talk differently in different parts of the United States of America. If you come from Boston, you might say ga and ka a little bit differently than if you come from Alabama or if you come from San Francisco. That's fine. These are kind of like, abstracted versions of these sounds. The second reason they might sound weird is our scientists have stretched them out. So what we're doing is we are taking that sound and just like a piece of taffy, like Stephanie showed, we're stretching that out and we're making them even more different than they would normally be at first. Now that might make it sound a little bit less like a ga and a ka, but you'll get the hang of it once you get going. So let's say ka, because obviously it's blinking, that's the right one. So let's go ahead and click start.
Ka,
Okay. So that one was a ga. Let's hit ga. Let's wait for a ka one to hear the difference.
Ka,
Okay. I was talking, so that didn't help very much, but there was a little bit of a difference there, and that one sounded more like a ka. And there's a little bit of a gap. You can almost hear this short pause between the sound starting and the rest of the ah. Let's go ahead and click there.
Ka,
That was shorter and faster. It's more like a ga.
Ka,
And again, pause before we hear that. Did everyone, I hope, hear that that just sounded different than the last one? And again, it might not have sounded exactly what you think a ka to sound like, but your brain can hear that difference if you practice at this a bit more. And then, Stephanie, if we click the I button here, are we able to hear the example stimuli?
I believe we are.
So if you ever get
Ka,
mixed up, click that I button. Let's click ga a few times.
Ka, Ka,
Okay.
Ka,
Now let's click ka.
Ka, Ka, Ka,
Let's go back and forth now.
Ka, Ka,
Okay.
Ka,
They're a little
Ka,
bit different. They're a little bit different. And we want to train your brain to tell the difference between those sounds, even though it's hard, right? So go ahead and play it. It's going to get faster. It's going to get harder.
Ka,
Good,
Ka,
good. Now you can see as
Ka,
Stephanie, again, I'm talking, that's going to make it harder. But as
Ka,
Stephanie, right, these sounds are actually going to get more and more similar. They're going to get a little bit harder to tell the
Ka,
difference between.
Ka,
Now, Henry, I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat about
Ka,
uh, how you should be listening into auditory exercises like this. Is it better to use headphones? Is it better to use a speaker? What if you're in a noisy environment? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So especially with these auditory exercises, we certainly
Ka,
want you to give yourself the best shot of hearing these differences. And so it's perfectly
Ka,
fine to use a laptop or your phone, but you might find
Ka,
it helps you concentrate better if you use headphones or something like that. And some people tell me
Ka,
it helps them focus better, and that can be nice. Again, I
Ka,
don't want people to worry about it too much. What's important is you train your brain at a level
Ka,
where many of them right and some of them wrong. And you may perform better with
Ka,
headphones. You're training your brain kind of equivalently as well. But whatever helps you focus your
Ka,
attention, your auditory system is a good way to train. If you wear hearing aids, go
Ka,
ahead and your hearing aids while you train. It will actually probably be helpful to your brain
ka,
to have this sound information processed by the hearing aid and then sent on to your brain. We
ka,
want your brain to work with hearing aids better. Do you want to swap on to another one or
ka,
just to show a few of the other sounds?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So let
hearing aids
me.
are a great idea. And again, I see someone asking about hearing loss. Does hearing loss make a difference in being able to do this exercise? At one level, yes, of course. If you have hearing loss, it's going to be harder to do these exercise, but that's okay. We are not here judging you about how well or how not well you did. All we care about is your training at a level that's right for you, where you're getting many of them right and some of them wrong. If you have hearing loss, it's going to adapt to you and it's going to stretch out that ga and that ka to make it a little bit easier for you to notice. And I want you to just train at that level that's right for your hearing loss. That's a good level for your brain to be working at. So it's harder, but that's okay. We're not in competition here. No one's judging you compared to anyone else who's doing this. Just do it at the level that's good for you. Same question for tinnitus, for example. I see that one coming up. If you have tinnitus, you might notice in ordinary life that it's harder to process speech or hear what people are saying around you if they're talking quickly. So this exercise is designed to help with that basic brain information processing. You try this out. Again, it might be harder for you if you have tinnitus than if you a person who has doesn't have tinnitus, but that's okay. We are training your unique brain. It's going to get easier for you to do. You should train at the level where it's going to track to your performance and it's going to, help sharpen your brain's ability to process these sounds and process speech.
All right, so I went and picked a level from stage 2, and now we have these two new sounds.
ud, ugh,
So we have kind of an ud like mud and ugh like pug,
Let's,
which are
let's hear them a
very
few more
confusable.
times. Let's hear them a few more times.
ud, ugh, ugh, ud,
Okay, so hopefully your brain is listening for the very end of that sound. That duh has like a little bit of a sharper end, and the guh has to me just a little bit of a kind of extended end. One more time, and then let's do a few together.
ud, ugh,
Okay, great. All right, let's see how we do here.
ud, 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 ud,
Lots of uds.
Yes.
ud, ugh,
There we go.
No. It
So a
can
little bit of a tail on that one, like you
it
had
can get
said.
into a little bit of a streak, but I
ud,
promise you, it's them randomly every single time. So
ud.
we could probably move on to our next exercise, Stephanie, but I hope that illustrates the fundamental idea of what this exercise is doing. I hope that shows you how you can practice a little bit. Just go to hit that I, and then you can listen to the individual sounds. And again, I want everyone to walk away understanding that it doesn't matter if you have good hearing or bad hearing, tinnitus or a hearing aid or processing disorder. It's going to track to a level that's good for you. And what's important is you're working out your brain at that level.
All right. So next one, Henry, you're in luck, is going to be eye for detail. Uh, your favorite. So let me go ahead and bring that up. Is there a particular level you want me to start on, or is just stage 1, level 1?
Well, let's look at one, but then we'll do some other ones because they're so
Sure.
close. So the idea with this exercise, well, let's go through the tutorial and I'll explain it as we go. So look at all these butterflies. And again, what a great job our art team did. And they're all pretty different when you have a lot of time to look at them. And what's going to happen when you do eye for detail is you're going to see 3 butterflies. They're going to appear one at a time. And 2 of those will match. 2 of them will be the same. So go ahead and click that next button. And you just have to remember where you saw the ones that are the same. So there's a first one, a second one, and a third one. Okay, and it shows you the second and the third ones were the ones that match. Now, pause for just a minute if you don't mind, Stephanie. This is a little bit of a hard exercise in certain ways. When you see the first butterfly, you don't know if it's going to match or not. You have to store that butterfly in memory. And then when you see the second butterfly, you have to, again, start to notice, is that the same as the first one or is it new? And you have to do that again at the third time. So this is a speed exercise, but it actually works on your memory a bit as well. But the most important thing this exercise is doing from a speed perspective is it's causing your brain to rapidly notice something that occurs in your visual domain, in your visual field, and it's making you move your eye to look at exactly that. We want your eyes to be rapidly exploring the visual environment, and when your eye lands on something new and interesting, we want your brain to rapidly be able to process the information that your eyes are getting. If you're wandering through the world and your eyes never move, you're going to miss most of what's going on around you. But if you're moving through the world and when something interesting happens, your brain notices it and your eye rapidly looks at it, you figure out what it is, and then your eye rapidly goes back to the next thing. Well, first of all, you're going to see and explore the world better around you, but you're also going to be a safer driver, for example, or a safer walker, have better mobility as you move around the world. So that's what this exercise is really designed to do. So let's look at a few examples now that you've clicked that last one. All right, let's click start to begin. So again, lots of butterflies, a first one, a second one, and a third one. So in that case, the first two are the ones that matched. We click the first one and the second one. And again, like Hawkeye, don't click on the butterflies as soon as you see them. Wait till all the butterflies are gone and then click. Once the circles appear, now we click. So the first one and the second one are the ones that matched. Okay, here's a first one, kind of orange. A second one is different. And the third one matched the first one. So this is a great example. The first one is one kind of butterfly. The second one does not match it. And we don't know, is the third one going to match the first butterfly or the second butterfly? Our eyes have to move over. They have to process that information. They have to analyze it. And I've said all that and I've already forgotten. So did it match the first one or the second one, Stephanie?
Second one.
Okay.
There we go.
Right. Let's do one or two more. All right, the first two match. Now, if the first two match, great news. You can go ahead and click them as soon as we see them. Now, let's move on to another level because this is matching 2 out of 3, but this exercise is going to get harder as time goes on. So let's do similarity, eccentricity, blah, blah, blah. Scroll down just a little bit more. Okay, let's do like the bottom right on stage 3.
Great.
Now, first
Ooh-wee.
of all, this is harder, right? That we kind of have this green on green, so our visual system has to work a little harder. And they're also far out in our peripheral vision now. Our eyes are going to have to jump around a lot. Now, we're going to be slower because this level is harder, but that's okay. Again, doesn't matter whether we're fast or slow exactly. What matters is that we're training at a level that's right for us. Okay, go ahead and click start. Okay, just 3 still, but let's do 2.
All right, let's get into the exercise proper. 1, 2, 3.
3. Again,
So
my brain's working
1,
harder
3.
to do that for sure. And you can see that because they're a little faster now, your eyes have to move more quickly from one target to the next. 1, 2, 3. Well, that was hard. They were all kind of the same color of green. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say they were all kind of light
let's
green.
get this wrong. Let's get this wrong and just show, hey, if you get it wrong, it's going to slow down for you. Now, let's get a few more wrong. Let's make it nice and slow. Completely fine to get some wrong and just get down to a level that you are comfortable with.
All right, getting this one wrong too.
Okay. All right, well, I'll pay attention here and try and get this green on green. There's the first one, the second one, and the third one. So the first and third are the ones that matched there, and the second was the one that different. It had that big splotch of yellow on it that kind of helped me notice it was different. Let's go look at another level now.
Sure.
I have done these all, but I don't know them by heart, so I'll have to guess a little bit. Let's try the middle left on stage 4 there. Another very pretty pattern. Here we're looking at like these little floral arrangements, if I may put it that way. I feel like a Victorian in my drawing room. Go ahead and click start.
Oh.
Okay, so now we have 5 and we have to match 3. So we're challenging our working memory a little bit more, and we're still challenging our speed because we have to keep our eyes moving from step to step here. All right, let's do 1 or 2 of these together.
All right.
There's kind of a purple one, a yellow one, another yellow one, a blue one, and a yellow one. So again, a little bit harder now to figure out which ones match because we get several different distractors, but in this case, it was these yellow ones. And there they are. Good job. Let's do one more. There's sort of a blue one, a yellow one, a green one, up green. Oh, well, I didn't get that one wrong. I got that one right. I agree. Those were the first two
I
matches.
think it was the first one. Yeah, there we
Oh,
go.
very good. I see those flowers are yellow and green. That threw me a little bit. All right, I'm going to let you see some. I'm going to answer a few questions for you that I see live here. I see someone saying, "Hey, I find myself getting very tired working on these exercises. I want to fall asleep. Why is that?" Well, these exercises are exercise for your brain, and after you do them for a little while, you can start to feel a little bit fatigued. It's not totally different than going to the gym and exercising your body. And we generally recommend, hey, we want you to feel awake and sharp as you're doing the exercises. It's really important that your brain's attention is pumping neurochemicals, that your brain's reward systems are pumping neurochemicals. That's all really important for brain plasticity. And so when you start to really feel fatigued, hey, you should just stop for the day and just come back to it the next day. And hey, if that's a 5 or a 10-minute session for you, that's fine. Do 5 or 10 minutes of BrainHQ and just come back and keep at it the next day. That's completely fine. So we don't want you working to the point where you feel exhausted or fatigued. If you feel tired afterwards, that's okay. Probably a sign that you got a good brain workout and you're ready for some rest and relaxation. But don't try to push through your fatigue. In the same way, if you're exercising, you wouldn't push through your fatigue. We don't want you to do that with brain training either. Great question. I have another question about just progression here. If a stage is easy, should you jump ahead a little bit? So if you are picking out exercises, do you mind going back to the stage menu now that we're chatting about
Sure.
this? Again, if you've picked out an individual exercise like Eye for Detail here, each of the levels is shown as one of these tiles. And again, like I said, I generally recommend that you move through them from top to bottom, from left to right, so to speak. And as you finish each level, and this is a demo account, so it doesn't have any progress on it, but as you finish a level, it's going to show some history of what you did. It'll show you how many stars you earned and your best score and your first star. And I recommend in general you do at least each level once. And let's say like this question, you were really good at it. You did the first level, you got 4 or 5 stars, you felt like it was straightforward. That's fine. Just do it once and move on to the next one. But then when you encounter one that's a little more challenging for you, repeat that level a few times, right? Work on trying to get better at it. Come back the next day. As you do that, you'll earn medals. You see where it says earn stars there. That'll turn into a bronze or a silver or a gold medal as you go. And that's a good way to track your progress as you're moving through the levels like this. I don't really recommend skipping ahead a whole lot. I mean, if you're curious, go right ahead. It's not going to hurt anyone. But if you're trying to systematically train your brain, I generally recommend going through them again, top to bottom, left to right. And if it's easy for you, just do it once. It's a little more challenging. Well, that's a signal that your brain needs to work on it and repeat it a few more times. So, fantastic. Fantastic. Let's see. I'm just going to see a few other questions, and I mainly may start to just answer questions now, Stephanie. Do you want to try and demo one more exercise, or should we just try and go through some questions here?
Um, I think we can go ahead and pivot to doing questions, and then if people have specific questions about the remaining exercises, we can always come back and demo it.
Okay, that sounds super. That was a question about progression, and let's see. Well, I'm going to answer a few of these recent ones that have just come up now. And again, these are more around progression. Rosalind asks, "Hey, is it best to have BrainHQ select the best exercises to do rather than me?" And that's a great question. You can do BrainHQ in either one of two ways. We've been showing you how to pick out individual exercises, but there is also that personal trainer button. And do you mind clicking on that, Stephanie?
Sure thing.
When you click on the personal trainer button, it's going to have BrainHQ pick out a schedule for you. And I see that Stephanie's just started on this account because it's a demo account, so it's only going to give her one thing to do today. But normally when you clicked on this, you would see a whole lot of exercises that BrainHQ has picked out for you. And what I generally recommend to people is, hey, if you're just getting started with BrainHQ, then I would recommend using the personal trainer. BrainHQ is going to pick out individual exercises for you. It's going to kind of do this more straightforward ones first. It's going to save the more complicated ones till later. It's going to automatically advance you through the levels based on how your performance is. And that's just a great way to use BrainHQ. once you feel like you're very comfortable with the exercises, you feel like you generally have a hang on, what are you supposed to listen to? What are you supposed to click? At that point, you're welcome to have a favorite exercise and come back and pick it individually and do more levels. Like I said, I loved eye for detail. So back in the early days when we were building this out, I trained on the personal trainer, but I also just picked eye for detail as an individual exercise and worked my way through the levels and got medals because I just liked it. You might find an exercise that you think is really challenging, but maybe you recognize, hey, this is something that's good for my brain, and you can pick that out individually. Completely fine either way, but generally I would start with the personal trainer, and then I would pick out individual exercises out of curiosity, or if there were certain things I wanted to double down on. That's exactly right. Let's see. I have someone also asking, again, kind of on the same topic of moving through these levels, hey, what rule does the personal trainer use? And there's a whole webinar we offer on the personal trainer. You can go to our YouTube site, which Stephanie mentioned at youtube.com/brainhq. You'll find one of these webinars that's all about the personal trainer. But the short answer is the personal trainer always has you working on about 6 exercises. And then it moves you through those levels kind of one by one in each of those exercises. And what it tries to do is it tries to advance you to a new level, once you've gotten reasonably good at it. So it'll keep repeating levels until you hit a certain performance threshold. And once you do, it'll kind of advance you on to a next level at that point. So it's really like a supportive coach that's always trying to make sure, hey, have you gotten enough good at this level to advance you on to the next one? So it's a nice way to use BrainHQ for that reason.
Okay.
And
I have
oh
an
yeah,
interesting question from Sharon that I've been staring at since the beginning of this webinar. Can you talk a little bit more about the hearing and brain speed issue? I assume it is my hearing, but even with hearing aids, I miss things, so it might be brain speed, or maybe I need both. How do I tell whether I need to work on attention or brain speed?
that is a great question. So hearing aids are an incredibly helpful thing for lots and lots and lots of people. What hearing aids do is mostly they make sounds louder, right? And that can be helpful because one of the things that happens with our hearing as we get older is that, we lose accurate perception of high frequencies in particular. So making those sounds louder can be helpful. Certain advanced hearing aids even process the sound a little bit to maybe help focus the hearing aid on speech so you can hear speech. But that's only half of the question, right? The other half of the question is brain speed as we're talking. A hearing aid can make a sound louder, but it can't slow it down and it can't make your brain faster to hear that sound. And so I think a combination of hearing aids and using Brain HQ, particularly the auditory exercises, are a great, great answer for people who, hey, are concerned about their hearing or starting to notice that they are having a harder time keeping up when a kid talks really quickly, or maybe having a harder time hearing sounds in a movie theater or a noisy environment. The hearing aid can help your hearing by making it louder, and training on Brain HQ can help your hearing by making you faster, essentially. And I think that's a wonderful combination. And exactly like you say, Stephanie, or as the questioner said, hey, they're just two very different aspects of hearing, and I'd like to see a world where those things worked more hand in hand because they're both so important. Great question.
All right, let's see.
Shall we take one more and then we'll be at the hour, I think.
I think so. Yeah, we are just about there.
Let's see. So many great ones. Let's see if I can find one more good one just about speed that's worth that we should tackle here. Um,
Oh, here's an interesting question. Is there an upper limit to how much brain speed improvement a person can achieve?
That is a great question. How fast can the brain get? And there
Yeah.
is an upper limit. Absolutely, right? Uh, if we look at top performing athletes or people who have the fastest brains that we've measured on these tasks, we can see that people can distinguish what they see or what they hear down to, probably on the order of, we talked about a 50th of a second when I gave my intro talk, and we can see people who are maybe 2 or 3 times faster than that. They can perceive things accurately even when they just hear or see them for 1/100th of a second or around that phrase. And I don't know if you want your brain to be any faster than that, right? If you get too fast, like it's not enjoyable to see a movie anymore, right? The way a movie works is, as you know, is it shows you a lot of still images and your brain can't process them fast enough so they look like they're moving. So it's nice to have a brain that works in that way. I met a guy once when I was working at a retirement community with BrainHQ. He had one of the fastest auditory brains we had ever measured. And I asked him, how is it? Your brain is so sharp and so fast at these auditory tasks. And it turns out he had been a telegraph operator in World War II. And he knew Morse code even then, 60 years later. And, he had just been incredibly fast at doing telegraph and Morse code in World War II. And I really think that rewired his brain to just give him an unbelievably fast auditory brain. So there's a limit to how fast you can get, and BrainHQ will get you to that limit if you continue to work intensely at it. What worries us more sometimes is how slow your brain could get. And of course, what we want to do is give those slow brains that extra boost with BrainHQ training. So if you're doing the speed exercises and you're reliably getting 5 stars on most of them, first of all, good for you. You have a brain that's as fast as a top athlete, for example, a top tennis player, people who want their brains to be really fast, and you've put your brain in that domain, and that's good for your brain health, good for your cognitive performance, and good for your speed. Most of us aren't quite at that level. And so what we want to do is, hey, we just want to keep training, even if we're not going to have the fastest brain in the world by continuing to exercise our speed. We're going to maintain our performance. We're going to maintain our brain health and, keep a healthier brain as we go on in life. And that's really what we want to see with Brain HQ. So great question to wrap up on. Thanks, Stephanie.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do sort of closing words here. So first, Henry, thank you so much for your presentation today and for also, waxing poetic about the science behind all these brain speed exercises. Always a delight. I also wanted to thank everybody in the audience today for one, participating and coming out and joining in and asking all those wonderful questions. If you have any questions that are dire and Henry and I didn't get an opportunity to answer them, you can always, like I said earlier, reach out to our support team. The best email address to reach them at is support@brainhq.com. You can also visit our support site with answers to hundreds of common questions about BrainHQ. That address is support.brainhq.com. As far as the recording of this webinar goes, it should be up on YouTube sometime next week. You can head over to youtube.com/brainhq to subscribe and get a notification when that video goes up. And our next webinars, August 13th, Henry is going to be returning with Clever Creatures, a look into animal intelligence, taking place on August 13th. And then following that, the next office hours webinar is going to be all about the memory exercises. So similar to this one about brain speed and one that we did earlier about attention, we're going to be taking a look into memory exercises next. All right, I think that's it for me. Henry, do you have any final takeaways for our audience today?
No, thanks to everyone for coming. Again, brain speed's one of the most important things we can train on. So I'm glad to see there was so much interest and so many questions. And I'll just wish everyone happy brain training. Thanks for joining.
Happy brain training.